It was supposed to be a simple celebration, a small gathering for my birthday. Just me, my son Adrian, and his wife, Vanessa. I had spent days preparing, baked my own cake, cleaned the house, set the table, with my best chinas. It wasn't about gifts or grand gestures. I just wanted my family together. I wanted to feel included, seen, loved. But from the moment Vanessa walked in the door, something was off. She barely looked at me, didn't say hello, didn't even comment on the decorations or the food I had poured my heart into. Instead, she turned to Adrian and said, "Can we make this quick?" I promised my mom I'd help with her party prep. Her words stung. I glanced at Adrian, hoping he'd say something, defend me, acknowledge the effort I'd put in. But he just smiled awkwardly and said, "Yeah, we won't stay too long." That stung even more. Still, I tried to stay upbeat. I led them to the dining room, where the table was already set with steaming dishes, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, my famous apple pie cooling on the counter. Vanessa barely glanced at it. She pulled out her phone, tapping away, clearly disinterested. Adrian tried to make small talk, but it felt forced. He kept checking his watch, like he couldn't wait to leave. My birthday was turning into a countdown, not a celebration. I lit the candles on my cake anyway, sang the birthday song to myself, because no one else offered. Vanessa stayed seated, scrolling on her phone. Adrian gave me a half-hearted smile, but no one clapped. No one even took a photo. I made a wish. It wasn't for gifts or flowers. I wished for presents, for kindness, for someone to see me. I blew out the candles, to silence. We ate quickly. Vanessa barely touched her food. Then she stood up and said, "We should go. My mom's expecting us." Adrian nodded, didn't even look at me. "Thanks for dinner, Mom." That was it. That was my birthday. After they left, I sat alone at the table. The candle wax had pooled. The pie, untouched. The silence in the house was louder than any argument could have been. I wasn't angry. I was invisible. The worst part, this wasn't the first time. Vanessa had always been cold, ever since they got married, polite in front of others, but dismissive in private. She made it clear I was just Adrian's mother, not someone she needed to impress, not someone she cared to include. I had ignored it for years, for Adrian's sake, told myself it was just adjustment, that she'd come around, but she never did. And Adrian, he never stood up for me. I thought things might change after they moved into the guest house last year. Their place had a plumbing disaster, and I offered them my space without hesitation, rent-free, no questions asked. "I'm happy to have you here," I told them, and I meant it. I loved having Adrian close. I dreamed of family dinners, game nights, movie marathons in the living room. But those dreams never became reality. Vanessa kept to herself. Adrian followed her lead. They came and went, like tenants, not family. And whenever I suggested a meal together, or asked how their day was, Vanessa would sigh, or roll her eyes, or mumble something about space. I started to feel like a burden. In my own home, it all came to a head. About a week after my birthday, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Vanessa was on the phone, in the guest house. She didn't know. I was outside, watering the garden. "She just doesn't fit in," she said. "I mean, Adrian's mum is sweet, sure, but she's stuck in her ways. We can't build our life around her. I need a place that feels like ours, not some museum of her memories." I stood frozen, water spilling over the pot. My hands trembled. A museum of memories. Was that all my home was to her? Not a sanctuary, not a shelter, just a relic of a life she didn't care for. Did Adrian feel the same? That night, I confronted Adrian gently. We were alone in the kitchen. I asked if he was happy, if he felt comfortable, living here. He hesitated, then said, "It's not about comfort. Mom, Vanessa just needs her own space. She feels like a guest." I was stunned. "A guest?" I asked. "I offered you this space, out of love. This is your home too." He looked away. "She doesn't see it that way." My heart cracked. A little. But I nodded, tried to hide the hurt. "Then maybe it's time. You both found your own space." He blinked. "You want us to move out?" "No," I said. "I want you to want to stay. And if you don't, you should go." They moved out 2 weeks later. No fight, no drama, just quiet boxes packed, and an awkward goodbye. Adrian hugged me. Vanessa didn't. She offered a small wave, then climbed into the car, without another word. I watched them drive away, with mixed emotions. Sadness, of course, but also relief. The house felt empty, but it also felt like mine again. I walked through the room slowly, touching the furniture, straightening picture frames, breathing in the stillness. There were no whispered complaints, no footsteps avoiding me, just peace. For a while, that was enough. Months passed. We kept in touch. Adrian called sometimes. Quick check-ins. "How are you?" "Mom, work's busy." "Vanessa's good." Short, polite, surface level. I missed him, missed us, but I didn't push. I didn't ask for visits or beg for time. I gave them space and filled mine with hobbies. Gardening, knitting, volunteering at the library. I told myself I was fine, independent, resilient, and most days I was. Then came the call. It was Adrian. His voice was tight. "Hey, Mom, Vanessa and I were talking. We're thinking of buying a house." I smiled. "That's wonderful. Have you found a place you like?" He hesitated. "Well, we were wondering if maybe you'd consider selling yours." I froze. "My house?" "Yeah, it's big. Too much for you alone. We could keep it in the family." I swallowed. "You want to buy my home? It makes sense," he said. "You've always said it'd go to me anyway." That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the halls of my house, barefoot, quiet, like a ghost. Every corner held a memory. Birthday candles on the kitchen counter, rain tapping on the sunroom windows, Adrian's childhood height, marks on the pantry wall. This wasn't just a building. It was my life, and they wanted it. Not to preserve it, not to honor it, to remake it, strip it, redesign it, until it no longer looked like me at all. And the worst part, they thought I'd be grateful. The next morning, I invited them over. I made tea, set out cookies. Adrian smiled like everything was normal. Vanessa wore a real estate blazer and carried a folder. She was already in buyer mode. "We'd want to knock down that wall," she said, pointing to the living room. "Open concept. And maybe refinish the floors. The color's a little dated." I sipped my tea and said nothing. She went on. "Of course, we'd give you a fair price. And you could get a lovely condo. No stairs. Less maintenance. Much more suited for someone your age." Someone your age. The words echoed. I smiled. Tightly. Then I looked at Adrian. "Is this what you want too?" He hesitated. "I mean, it makes sense. Mom, you don't need all this space, and we're thinking of starting a family soon." There it was. The real reason, my house, was suddenly their future. And I was an inconvenience, a stepping stone. I nodded slowly. "Let me think about it." Vanessa beamed. "Of course. Take your time." But I didn't need time. I already knew. That night, I pulled out the deed. I stared at it for a long time, ran my fingers over the paper. This house was mine. I had paid every mortgage, repaired every roof leak, painted every wall. Adrian had grown up here, but I had built it, and suddenly, an idea began to form. A quiet spark, not spite, not revenge, something else. Reclamation. The next morning, I called my lawyer, asked about the process, about selling, and donating, because if my home was going to be taken from me, it was going to be on my terms. I spent the next week meeting with non-profits, organizations, local charities, shelters, educational foundations, places that helped women like me, women starting over, women who were told they were too old, too much, or no longer needed. I found one that resonated, a transitional housing program for older women displaced by divorce or loss. They needed a larger property, a home, and I had one. We signed the paperwork quietly, no press, no announcement, just a clean, clear act of choice. The next weekend, Adrian and Vanessa came by again. They brought coffee, smiling like they had already moved in. Vanessa carried paint samples. Adrian held a measuring tape. We were thinking, she said, light sage for the kitchen, and maybe a modern tile in the bathroom. I listened, nodded, waited. Then I said, "Oh, I sold the house." Silence. They froze. Vanessa blinked. "I'm sorry." "You what?" "I sold it." "To who?" Adrian asked, his voice sharp. "A local non-profit. They're turning it into transitional housing for women rebuilding their lives." Vanessa's jaw dropped. "You gave it away." "I didn't give it away. I chose who would have it." Adrian looked stunned. "But why?" I stood calmly. "Because I built this home with love, and I want that love to continue in the lives of others, not be gutted," and turned into an open-concept showroom. Vanessa scoffed. "This is insane." Adrian was quiet, too quiet. He looked around the house, as if seeing it for the first time. The family photos, the hand-sewn curtains, the dent in the wall from his first bike. "This was your plan all along?" he asked. "No," I said, "but your reaction told me everything. This wasn't about preserving a legacy. It was about control." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You blindsided us." I shrugged. "You assumed. You walked in here with your Pinterest boards and your renovation dreams and forgot. This was never yours to take." Adrian looked down. He didn't defend her, didn't defend himself, just stood there, smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Finally," he whispered, "I'm sorry." "Mom." I nodded. "I know." Then I reached out, touched his arm. "This doesn't change my love for you, but it does change how I protect myself." He nodded back. There were no hugs, no grand reconciliation, just truth, spoken plainly, accepted quietly. They left shortly after. No measuring tape, no paint samples, just silence, and the sound of a door closing gently. I stood in the living room for a while, breathing. The air felt different, lighter, like something had been released. A weight, a fear, a lingering hope that someone would finally choose me, without condition. But maybe the only one who needed to choose me was me. In the weeks that followed, I packed slowly, box by box, room by room, not rushed, not bitter. Each item I touched carried a memory, some joyful, some painful. I let them all pass through me, like wind. I didn't try to hold on, just honored them, then let them go. When moving day came, the non-profit sent a team of volunteers. They were kind, respectful, grateful. One woman hugged me and whispered, "This place will change lives." I moved into a modest cottage, on the edge of town, 1 bedroom, sunlight through every window, a tiny garden in back, quiet, safe, mine. It wasn't grand, but it felt right. I painted the walls warm colours, hung new curtains, brewed tea in silence. For the first time in years, I felt at home, in my own skin, no footsteps to tiptoe around, no strained dinners, no tension in the air. Just me. Adrian called sometimes. He asked how I was, told me about work, about their dog, about Vanessa's yoga retreat. I listened, but didn't ask to visit, didn't offer my space. I had offered, for years. Now, I waited to be invited, and when I wasn't, I didn't beg. Instead, I poured another cup of tea, watered the plants, watched the light shift across the floor as the day passed, peacefully. Sometimes, I wondered if Adrian understood, if he saw what it had cost me to always bend, to always yield, to stay silent for the sake of peace that never really came, but wondering didn't change anything. He had his life, and I had finally reclaimed mine. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. One afternoon, I received a letter from the non-profit, a thank you, with photos, smiling women in my old living room, cooking together, laughing on the porch, a bookshelf where my TV used to be, hope, where hurt had once lived. I pinned one of the photos on my new fridge, right next to a magnet that read, "Start again, brave one," because that's what I had done. I had started again, not bitter, not broken, but whole. Adrian visited once, alone. He looked around my little cottage and said, "It's nice here, peaceful." I nodded. "It is." He didn't ask to stay, and I didn't offer. We just sat in quiet understanding. Before he left, he hugged me tightly, longer than he had in years. "Thanks, Mom," he whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me what strength looks like." I smiled, didn't say a word. After he left, I sat on the porch, watched the sky shift from gold to lavender, and for the first time in forever, I didn't wonder what came next, because this was enough. Vanessa never called, never wrote, but I didn't expect her to. We were different pages, in different books, and that was okay. Not everyone has to fit. Not every relationship has to heal. Some things are just meant to teach us where our boundaries are, where our peace begins, where our story branches off from someone else's. And that's what mine did. It branched away, then bloomed. I joined a local writing group. Women, mostly, all older, all fierce. We wrote essays, short fiction, memoirs. One week, the prompt was, the moment everything changed. I wrote about my birthday, the quiet cake, the empty thanks, the phone call in the garden. I read it aloud. When I finished, no one clapped. They just nodded, wiped their eyes. One woman leaned over and whispered, "That wasn't just writing, that was truth." I submitted the piece to a local magazine. They published it under a pen name. It wasn't about exposure, it was about voice, claiming it, using it, trusting it. The response was overwhelming. Emails, letters, women stopping, me in the grocery store, telling me I had written their story. I hadn't expected that. I had only written mine, but sometimes one truth opens the door for many. The editor reached out, asked if I had more stories. I laughed. "Oh, I have decades." She offered me a column, monthly, a space to share, lessons, moments, changes. I said yes, not because I wanted attention, but because, for the first time in a long time, people were listening, and more importantly, I was speaking. My first column was titled, "Not Too Late." I wrote it at the little table, by my window, with a cup of tea and the afternoon light on my hands. I wrote about starting over, at 62, about letting go of what no longer fits, about releasing guilt for choosing yourself. When it published, the letters doubled. One woman wrote, "I cried the whole way through, not because I was sad, but because someone finally said it was okay to want more." Vanessa read the column. I know because she posted a vague quote from it on social media. No te, no name, just the words. Sometimes choosing yourself looks like letting them go. I didn't react, didn't comment, didn't reach out. Let her sit with it, with what she had lost, with what she might never understand. That boundaries are not revenge, they are clarity. And sometimes, clarity is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. I received a letter one morning, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a short note. I was wrong. You deserved better. You still do. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. Vanessa. I sat with it for a long time, then folded it back up, placed it in a drawer next to the deed to my cottage. Proof that people can change, but also proof that I didn't need that change to be okay. Adrian visited again that spring. He brought flowers, yellow tulips, my favorite. We sat on the porch, talked about the weather, the garden, his work. There was a softness to him I hadn't seen in years, less defensiveness, more presence. At one point, he said, "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately." I waited. Then he added, "You handled everything so quietly, so gracefully." I didn't understand it then, but now I do. That night, I journaled, wrote about what Adrian said, wrote about the quiet ache of being misunderstood for so long, and how sometimes understanding comes years later, if at all, but that it's still worth hoping for, still worth offering grace, even if no one asks for it, even if it arrives late, like a spring, after a bitter winter, soft, unannounced, but welcome. Summer came. My cottage bloomed. Tomatoes, lavender, little yellow wildflowers that I didn't plant, but didn't pull. They belonged, even if they came uninvited. That thought made me smile. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by. She was new to town, divorced, 53. "Your garden's lovely," she said. "Looks like peace." "It is," I said. "It took a while, but I got here." She asked if I'd join a community circle, a group of women meeting weekly to talk, share, heal. I said yes, not because I needed help, but because I finally had something to offer. Perspective, not polished, not perfect, just earned. And sometimes earned wisdom is the kind that sticks. In one of the meetings, a woman cried. Her son had stopped calling. Her daughter-in-law had blocked her. She said, "I feel like a ghost in their story." I reached across the table, held her hand. "I know that feeling," I said, "but ghosts don't disappear. They linger, and sometimes they turn into something else, like a voice, like a pen, like a story worth telling." After the meeting, she hugged me, said, "You made me feel seen," and I thought, isn't that what we all want? Not to be fixed or rescued, just seen, heard, felt, not as burdens, but as beings who've lived, lost, learned. That hug stayed with me. Long after the room emptied, I wrote about her, not by name, but about that ache of being erased. The column was titled, "Don't Vanish Quietly." It spread faster than any before. Women wrote in from across the country. Some whispered, some roared. All had something to say. I read every word and replied to most, because if someone takes the time to whisper their hurt, the least we can do is say, "I hear you." That fall, I hosted a dinner at my cottage, 6 women, One long table, candlelight, homemade soup, warm bread, stories. No one checked their phones. No one rushed. We laughed, cried, listened. It felt like something sacred, like family, but chosen, like healing, in motion. That night, as I washed dishes, I looked at the sink, full of suds, and thought, this is the kind of falls I was missing. Adrian came by the next week. He noticed the new chairs, the herb garden, the warmth. It's different here now, he said. Lighter. It is, I said. Then he paused. Do you think Vanessa Plava meant to hurt you? I thought for a long time. No, but intent doesn't erase impact. He nodded, quiet, and that silence felt like agreement. I don't hold anger anymore. It's too heavy, too loud. It drowns out the softer things I want to hear, like joy, laughter, peace. I've learned that peace isn't the absence of pain. It's what rises after you stop clinging to it, like light, through shutters, soft, surprising, but always there, waiting. Some nights, I still walk barefoot through the house, not because I'm lost, but because I'm home, and I don't take that for granted anymore. I light a candle, put on music, dance a little, while no one's watching, because joy shouldn't need permission, and healing doesn't always look like sitting still. Sometimes it moves, sometimes it sings, sometimes it just exhales. Adrian sent me a photo last week, him and Vanessa, smiling beside a new house. Not mine, not even similar, but theirs. I looked at the picture for a long time, then set it down, not with sadness, but with peace, because love doesn't always mean proximity, and distance doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it just means growth. I framed that photo, put it on a shelf, next to my own memories, not out of longing, but to remind myself we all take different paths, and sometimes loving someone means letting them walk theirs without you and still wishing them well. That's not weakness, it's wisdom, the kind that takes time and tears and quiet resolve. A neighbor brought over pie today, still warm. Pecan. I don't know how you do it, she said. Do what? Make solitude look so sacred. I smiled. It's not solitude, I said. It's presence. She didn't understand. Not yet. But maybe someday she would. And maybe then she'd pass it on too. They say life comes in seasons. Mine once felt like a long winter. Grey, cold, still. Now it feels like early spring. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just quiet blooms, unexpected warmth, the kind that makes you stop and breathe and say, yes, this is enough. Sometimes I wonder what people think when they see me now, alone, smiling, unhurried. Do they wonder who I used to be? Do they know how many versions of myself I buried to become this one? It doesn't matter, because I know I see her every day in the mirror. And finally, she sees me too. Helen. That's the name I write on every article, every recipe card, every birthday card I mail to the children at the shelter that now lives in my old house. Helen, not just a name, a reclamation, a reminder of everything I lost and everything I chose after, not in spite of it, but because of it. The shelter sent another update. Photos, letters. One said, "Thank you for giving me a place to dream again." I cried, not from sadness, but from recognition, because I knew that feeling, to dream again, after believing you had no more dreams left, to begin again, after being told you were done. That's power. Sometimes I sit in the garden, and think of nothing. Just the bees, the breeze, the breath in my chest that doesn't catch anymore. And I marvel at that, at how far a woman can come when she stops waiting for permission, when she stops shrinking and finally takes up the space she's always deserved. People ask me if I ever regret it, giving up the house, letting them go, walking away, and I say, no, because everything I released made room for everything I needed, and every step away was a step closer to myself. That's not regret. That's redirection. And I followed it all the way home. A local radio host read one of my columns. She invited me on air. Just 10 minutes. A small segment. I almost said no. Then I remembered the version of me who sat alone at her birthday dinner, too afraid to speak up. So I said yes, and when the microphone turned on, I told the truth. Not just mine, but the ones we all carry, the truths we whisper, into pillows, into steering wheels, into the silence that never answers back. The segment went viral. People shared clips, quotes, their own stories. It wasn't fame, it was connection. And isn't that what we all want in the end? To be known, to be understood, to say, this happened to me, and here, it happened to me too. That echo wasn't pain, it was relief. Vanessa never responded to the columns, but she subscribed to the newsletter. I saw the email. Every month, there she was, reading, lurking, maybe learning, or maybe just witnessing what she never expected. I could become. I didn't resent it. I welcomed it. Because the truth doesn't just heal. Sometimes it humbles. Adrian came for tea on a Tuesday, brought cookies, sat at my table like he used to when he was 10, feet swinging, asking questions, looking for approval. Now, he just listened, and I just was not performing, not fixing, just being with the son who had finally come back to me, not to take, but to witness, and maybe to honor. We didn't talk about the past, didn't revisit the hurt. We just shared space, tea, laughter, comfort. Sometimes he looked at me like he was seeing someone new, and in a way, he was, because I had become someone new, not by force, but by choice, by every nose that led to this yes. That night, I journaled again, wrote, I am no longer surviving. I am creating, not walls, not boundaries, but moments, connection, a soft life, built on solid ground, where everything I say comes from love, but never at my own expense. They asked me to speak at a conference on resilience, on rebuilding, on reclaiming. I stood in front of a room full of strangers and said, you are not too late, you are not too much, and you are never too far gone to come home to yourself. People cried, and afterward, they lined up, not for autographs, but for hugs. I hugged them all, because I remembered what it felt like to be untouched, unseen, to bake your own birthday cake and sing alone, to sit across from someone who once loved you and feel like furniture. I remembered, but I had also released it, not forgotten, but forgiven, not erased, but rewritten. The final scene isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just tea on a quiet porch, a breeze that knows your name, a life that no longer asks you to prove your worth. That's where I live now, in the quiet, in the earned, in the space between what was lost and what was found. Sometimes I reread my old journal, the pages filled with doubt, hurt, longing, and I thank her, the woman I was, for not giving up, for baking the cake anyway, for sitting alone and still hoping that joy would return. She didn't know it then, but she was planting seeds, and I get to harvest them now. Adrian called last week. He and Vanessa are expecting a boy. He told me, without expectation, no assumptions, just sharing. I congratulated him, meant it. Then, he asked, "Do you think you'd like to meet him when he arrives?" I smiled, said, "When you're ready, because now I wait for doors to open. I don't knock anymore. I knit a blanket, blue and cream, soft, not for approval, not to win favor, just because I wanted to, because love doesn't have to beg. It can just exist, quiet, steady, true." I mailed it, with no note, let it speak for itself. Weeks later, a photo arrived, a baby, wrapped in my blanket, peaceful, perfect, no caption, no signature, just proof that even when bridges burn, new ones can be built, quietly, without ceremony, without noise, just one stitch at a time. I lit a candle that night, for the past, for the present, for the pieces of me that had to fall apart, so I could become whole. I whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular, or maybe to every version of me that had gotten me here, even the broken ones, especially the broken ones. I sat on the porch again, watched dusk settle in, a breeze touch my cheek, like a kiss from something holy, and I knew this life, this one I built, from quiet refusals and bold new yeses, was mine, unborrowed, undoubted, unshaken. You asked me what happened after I gave up my house, after I walked away from the people who once made me feel small. This is what happened. I bloomed, not in spite of it all, but because of it. So if you're reading this and you feel unseen, if you're making your own cake, lighting your own candles, singing your own song, know this: you are not alone, and you are not done. There is life after silence. There is power in your name. There is still time to come home to yourself. And when you do, I'll be waiting here with tea and light and room for you at the table.